Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Omnichannel Marketer. This is your host, Kate Stevens. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Colm Mackin, the CEO of Act+Acre. Colm, it's so good to have you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, why don't we just start, by telling a little bit more about your background and, how you came to be the CEO of Act+Acre.
Yeah, happy to. I suppose you can tell from my accent. Originally from Ireland, moved to New York in 2013 with my wife Helen. Helen, my background is I actually worked in tax. I was a tax attorney structuring investments for hedge funds and private equity funds. So a million miles from this. My wife Helen was and is a psychologist and hairstylist and worked with a lot of celebrities at the time. And in 2017, we thought there was an opportunity to create a really interesting brand around scalp health. I was at a show with Helen, and she really was very passionate about scalp. And I suppose it was the layman in the conversation. I was like, I don't think anyone knows about this or is talking about this. This could be something interesting. And we were in Paris, and a few days later, I flew home to New York. And decided maybe there's something here, and I left my job, and yeah, we launched a year later in 2019.
For everyone's benefit, what is a trichologist?
A trichologist is sort of an expert in the scalp, so it's kind of like a scalp doctor. So the bridges the gap between a dermatologist and your hairstylist. So Helen would spend a lot of time with her clients, kind of diagnosing scalp issues and trying to and treating them. And why is scalp health so incredibly important is because it is the foundation for your hair health and the look and feel of your hair. Like, your hair is dead protein, but for when your hair is flat or feeling off, almost always it's an issue related to your scalp.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit more about the brand story. I think I heard a little bit now about the founding story. Talk to us about the problem that you're focused on and a little bit more about the brand.
Sure. I suppose when we started the conversation on Scalp when we launched in 2019, people really had no idea or about Scalp, and they didn't know why we were talking about it. And now, 5 years later, they're kind of aware of it, but they're not quite sure which products are right for them or how to fix the problems. So, taking a step back, the numbers that we see, 50% of Americans have some sort of scalp issue at a certain period of their life. Post-COVID, we're seeing a great deal of hair loss, and hair growth is a big issue for both men and women, and that's something that is probably not spoken about enough. And we launched the brand, and we're sort of based in transformational stories. We spent a lot of time on influencer and press because that's kind of what suits our long form content best, where we can really talk about the before and afters that you're seeing from our products. So when we launched the brand, we really focused around one hero SKU, the scalp detox, and that is to remove all of the impurities and the build up of your scalp. Since then, we've sort of broken down the problem a little further. So now we have products to suit. If you've got a dry scalp, then you probably should be using one of our products. Or if you've got an oily, if you've got dermatitis. So we're just getting more focused on real problems. And the fortunate thing that we have that I suppose other brands in our competitive set don't have is that we have as our founder Helen, who is a trichologist, and she really understands these core principles of scalp health.
So, when do you find that there's a huge educational component to your brand? Do most people come to you knowing that they have an issue with their hair and they're looking for a solution? Or, is there often an educational component to, they've kind of accepted that, they're balding or they have this dandruff? Like, I guess, I'm understanding, I'm trying to understand a little bit more about when and why customers come to you guys.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think there's really two customer profiles that we focus on. There's that the female that is experiencing hair thinning and hair loss, and that customer will almost always go for our stem cell serum, which is just incredible before and after. It's the viral product sells out all the time and we can't keep it in stock. So that kind of when we're really focused on the hair, and then they'll kind of supplement that with our cleanse or mask, all of that. It's a more traditional hair care customer. Then there is the consumer or the Act+Acre woman that is really focused on their scalp. So they have an itchy, dry scalp, itchy scalp, and sometimes it'll depend on the time of year the problems are facing. And when that's the case, that's when your UX experience is really important on site, where we try to use the quiz as much as possible. Helen also volunteers her time to have one-on-one consults to really get to the bottom of what the issue is, because the problem with scalp health is it's really not abundantly clear. Like you can have flakes in your scalp, and that can be, and people are like, okay, well, it's dry. Well, not always. You can also have an oily scalp but have flakes. Like it's really difficult to determine. So Helen has a series of questions that she can run through now, but in the easiest form is, if you think about it, and we just launched nationwide in Sephora, and it's been an educational journey of helping the beauty assistants in Sephora talk about and introduce the idea of scalp health to them. And what's worked really well is that, really thinking about, okay, so if you're interested in skincare, then, what about skincare for your scalp? And that's really the tagline that we launched with, and that helps people sort of bridge that gap. And if you do have an oily scalp and an oily complexion, an oily face, then you probably have an oily scalp. If you have a dry face, then you have a dry complexion, then you have a dry scalp, and that'll help them kind of directionally where they'll go in terms of selecting the right product for them. But the most important thing for us is, like, our products need to do something. Like, it's not like color cosmetics and it's just a lipstick, and it doesn't really matter, and you're going to use it. If you don't see a result within our products in the first couple of uses, then we're kind of in trouble. Like, we need you to use the product, which is a little different to many others. If you don't use our product, then they're not going to benefit. You're not going to benefit them, and you're probably not going to buy them again.
Hmm. That makes complete sense. So I think, transitioning now to the channel side, what was the first channel that you launched your brand in, and why did you choose this channel?
Sure. Again, back to the core of the brand is those transformational stories. So influencer was the first channel that we spent time, money, and resources on, and building out that program, and that can come to, like, ensuring that they have getting the products on time, and making sure that we're selecting the right influencers that we feel can benefit from our story, because it takes a lot more time for us, because we need to find people with scalp issues. It'd be completely misaligned just to find people who we think align with the brand value, and that can and also scalp issues that they're willing to talk about. That's the hardest part. Most people don't want to talk about it, and so we sort of need a coach and to be like, it's okay, and other people are going to benefit from knowing about this, and from knowing that, people, because it's a taboo topic, people don't want to talk about. So influencer, and then again press, and they're very similar, right? Because you're really trying to find people that are experiencing, like beauty editors that are experiencing scalp issues, and maybe hair loss, hair thinning, and then getting in front of them at the right time with our products.
And so how did you think about your influencer strategy? Was, and of course, obviously understanding and finding people that had scalp issues that you could fix. Was it, a micro influencer strategy? Was there a certain threshold of followers that you were looking for? Like, how did you broadly think about that influencer strategy?
Yeah, it's sort of, we always have the different buckets, but we have kind of those top tier. But typically for us, the macro influencers really don't want to talk about scalp health. They don't want to talk about hair thinning and hair loss, because they have other kind of commitments. So for us, it has been those micro nano influencers that are willing to have the conversation and talk about their transformational journeys, which has been really beneficial. So, but we've honestly had successes right across from the really big to the really small. It's been
Okay.
something
And
that
and then as it relates to how you started to sell your product, was that direct to consumer, on Shopify?
we did direct consumer on Shopify. Was kind of the first major channel. Since then, we expanded. We're in probably maybe 75 retailers. Most recently, we launched nationwide with Sephora, which has been really exciting. That just happened in August, and it's just a natural transition and a natural step up for the business. And along with that, we have had to really kind of refocus and hire new people and build the whole education side, which has been fun.
So talk to me about the Sephora launch. What have you learned? How did you prepare for it? And, how are you continuing to support that launch going forward?
Yeah, the Sephora launch was incredible. Like they've actually been really, really phenomenal partners. They have a very strong view on who this Sephora woman is, and it's actually really helpful. We have learned a great deal from them, and they're very active and they don't hold back their opinions from creative to messaging to product development. We just had our annual meeting with them in San Francisco, and it's just directionally because this was in August of 2023, and you're talking about 2024 and 2025, and they're very quick and go, well, no, I don't like that, and yeah, that's good, but that needs to tighten up, and it's just like, well, okay. As a leader, it really helps me sort of show, and also they have their own calendar already. So it helps if you're kind of unsure, or you're like, well, we could launch it here or there. They'll be, no, launch it here because this, and the difference is as well, which is more, and it honestly is quite a good thing. Is say if we had a product that was coming out in next July, and then it got pushed to September because of product development timelines, it wouldn't really change our .com that much. But maybe the press, maybe the season could change, but in terms of what we do, it doesn't really. We're not swimsuits or umbrellas. Like it doesn't. Seasonality isn't a huge thing for us. With Sephora, they're like, okay, we're locking in dates now for next October. Like it has to launch on 10th October, which is a little scary, and it'll be fine. But it means that our weekly touch bases on product development are a little bit. They're a little bit more tense than that might have been in the past. We just have to make sure we hit all our targets. But that's that's a natural thing when you grow up as a business.
And what does a nationwide Sephora launch look like? How many doors are you in? Is that every Sephora door?
So we launched with 250 doors, and there's 500 in total. We were just told very recently that they're launching it in another 100 doors, which is really exciting. The numbers have been great. The performance has been above what we expected. And yeah, they're really, really happy, and we're really, really happy. And what is it involved? We set a very ambitious target of trying to visit all 250 doors in the first 365 days. So it continues to involve a lot of jumping on planes and a lot of working with our incredible field team. So initially we done a lot of out of home. We done a lot of like stuff that you can, the buzzy stuff. We were in Times Square, we were in LA doing billboards, and then it's a lot of going in store, and meeting the people on the ground. And bringing in gifts and trying to buy into their good graces, but having them try the product, gifting them the product. But we've done kind of road shows in New York and LA and all over California, in Texas, in Florida. Those were our biggest markets, and we also hired people in each one of those markets to manage kind of and divide the country up into quarters. So that's been really, really, really beneficial from just sort of getting the brand. We're trying to touch everywhere at the moment. Like every store we want to visit at least once. So they have an understanding when people walk in through the door, they're like, okay, well, you're interested in scalp health? I know the brand. Because we're the first scalp brand to launch in Sephora. Like purely narrow focus on, we just want to solve that problem. We can solve that problem. If you want a big bouncy blow dry, you should probably go to a different brand because they can probably do that better than us. But when it comes to scalp, that's where we kind of come alive.
And so by going to all the Sephoras, the goal there is educating the, what do they call the Sephora team members?
Beauty
Ambassadors?
associates, BAs.
BAs. Okay. So the
Well, it,
goal
cha- it
is
changes quite a lot, actually.
to,
And I'm saying that, and I'm just thinking, was it changed again? It changes a lot.
okay, so the goal is to educate the beauty associates. And what does that actually look like? Do you have is that out of business hours that there's like a
Yeah,
learn-in
it's a good
session?
question.
Yeah,
It's
what does
so
it look
funny.
like?
So it's like I can what exactly it looks like because you're very kind of tin man at the start. You walk in, you're not quite sure what to do, so you can book in for an education session, which is a 4 hour education session. You like I'll usually walk in first. I'll say, look, I've found the Act+Acre here with me, Helen Levy, and they'll be like, oh my goodness. So then I bring Helen over to meet the team, and we do a kind of a one-on-one session. So Helen has to repeat her brand story or the brand story maybe 35 to 50 times because there's typically around 30 to 50 people in the store. So in an ideal world, kid, that we have like they come together. It's always in store hours, so that like 80% of the training is done in store hours. There are alternatives where you can come before the store opens and after. More difficult to get on the roster. That only happens because and store managers don't love that. And then there's like the FSC training, which is like a bunch of stores together in kind of a conference room. But the easiest thing and the thing you do kind of year one would be let's just kind of just drop into the store and do those kind of 5 hours and 4 hour sessions and yeah, a lot of showing people and just showing talent.
And so, you've said that the numbers look great. They're expanding your doors. So obviously, what does that look like? What data do you get access to from Sephora?
Well, we get a lot of data. We get all kind of the sell through numbers by store. You can see all the velocity. We see all the product selling. You don't get as much on the website. You really just kind of get the numbers on the website and the regions. But from the store perspective, you get like on a Sunday night, you'll get the previous week's sales. So we have set up an internal system that there's kind of an upload on a Monday morning. So it's all we've set up our own kind of Sephora dashboard. By Monday evening, I can see variance versus target, variance versus last week, where are we versus goal, all of that stuff. And then on Tuesdays, I have my direct sales meetings with all of our leads. We talk about kind of what we've done last week, how we're feeling about everything, where we're seeing spikes, and then what the plan is for the following week, and kind of any kind of key learnings.
Okay, so say you're running a little slow on a variant. What do you do? How do you react? Like, what tools do you have available to you to help, like, bolster those velocities?
Sure. If it's direct to consumer, if it's on the .com, then you have obviously your paid media is the biggest one. Dialing up on paid media, and you can talk. So that's kind of your main lever on, and then you could also push for paid exposure. So that could be a banner on their website. That could be kind of a social push. That could be participating in some sort of branded email. That would be on your .com on in store, and this is more bottom of the funnel. It's much more. You can be much more nimble, right? So, okay, let's look at your region. We're 20% off target. Okay, we need to invest in the underperforming stores in freelancers. Let's really kind of invest in. And so each one of our team, they kind of have access to 10, 15, 20 freelancers that are all kind of brand ambassadors for us. And so that can be really activating all of those guys in 1 week. Now, it takes a lot of work to do that, but we can do it if we felt we were off target. So, yeah, it's much more boots on the ground when
Boots
it
on the
comes to it.
ground. Makes complete sense. And how do you think, as a D2C and now, in Sephora and retail, how do you think about that omni-channel end-to-end brand experience, from the customer's perspective? And then what are some of the ways that you bridge the gaps between, your D2C and retail?
Well, I suppose it always comes through to consistency and education flowing to the consumer from Helen's content through influencer, through consumer testimonials, ensuring that if you're in store and someone says, "Oh, well, I've actually experienced dry scalp," then they know to give them the scalp detox versus what we would say online. If it was different, if the messaging is different on, and because it can get confusing really quickly, we have to be kind of have solidarity in our opinions when it comes to this, because again, it's a very new category, and trying to just focus on education and simplifying and messaging has really been a north star for us.
Makes complete sense. And, have you been able to find ways to connect D2C and your retail channel?
B2C and Sephora, well, they're certainly linked, because you naturally will see a fall from Shopify when you launch on Sephora D2C. Like
Yep.
that's just kind of a natural, like, over time it'll come back up in unison, but we definitely seen a softness in our numbers, and now we've seen great numbers in Sephora, but it's not as simple. It's not like you continue to hit your targets. You drop off a little, but that is made up for with interest, with your Sephora numbers. So there's certainly a link that we can see for sure.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. All right, so shifting gear, something we always like to ask our guest is, a topic that they feel bold or passionately about.
Well, the topic we feel most passionate about is scalp care and really educating the consumer on that. But I suppose as it relates to this podcast, I would probably talk about kind of focusing on one or two things rather than this continuous loop of testing. I think after 4 or 5 years, I think that's something that when I meet a new founder, they're very interested in new channels and jumping from one to the next. And one thing that's always kind of served us well is just sort of that kind of focus on, let's just let's make bets on channels at the start of the year, and then fix those channels, and
Hmm.
investigate and iterate, and make those better, as opposed to switching everything on at the same time, and then just sort of like jumping from one to the next, because you can just become busy, and being busy is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, completely. And so that focus for you has been influencer, press, and now retail via
Yeah,
Sephora.
correct. Yeah, no, we support it absolutely with how you meta head spend, but we try not to go super broad. Like we do a little bit on podcast, but that's more so. Helen loves this podcast. Really relates to the founder. She's had some conversations with her, and they're like, "Let's sponsor. These are good people. Let's sponsor this here."
Yeah.
Or they've reached out, and I was like, "You should, like, can I give you? I should met someone." That's always the case, and even on TikTok, it's mostly from a paid spend perspective. It's almost always Helen knows someone and she's given the product, and then they're like, "We should support these people. These are good people."
Hmm.
So we don't spend that much time, money, or resources trying to look for new channels. We really just do spend. Are we being clear in our message? Is it being, or like, what about the web? What's going on? Do people understand this stuff? And that's what we spend most of our days kind of thinking about, and how to make that better.
Makes complete sense. Shifting gears to our lightning round. So just kind of quick questions, quick answers. Favorite omni-channel brand?
It really does change week to week, given like you see an email and you're like, wow, they're killing it right now. And some friends of our friends that I think have incredible brands are the New Co, the Outset, Fable and Main, all kind of similar categories. Some make hair care, some make scalp care, but they're all friends, and we continuously share wins and losses with them, and talk about, we were all kind of small independent brands, and trying to do special things, and I really love all of those. The New Co, Outset, and Fable and Main.
Makes complete sense. Thing you wish you can change about our industry?
I suppose the acknowledgement that scaling is almost the exception and not the rule. Like this, we all, and I think it's changed more recently, but especially probably in 2019, 2020, there was kind of Harry's, Allbirds, Glossier, all of these brands scaling it very aggressively. So then there was this here kind of understanding that okay, well everybody's going to do that, and I think a lot of, especially for a lot of the brands that started at the same time as Act+Acre, most of them are now gone, and I think those goals and those